Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, County Council approves Clarksburg Gateway Sector Plan. Do they just vote for more congestion on I-270? Proposed Maryland data center project promises clean power and economic growth. So why do groups want to keep us in the dark? SAVE Act, voting in Montgomery County. It's easier than getting a library card. And Mark Elrich, Fee Fest. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by former House of Delegates member and attorney Marice Morales and president of the Maryland Young Republicans, Jackie Sackstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Welcome to 21 This Week. A lot to cover today. Montgomery County is moving forward with the Clarksburg Gateway Sector Plan, adding more housing and developing the Up-County. But critics say the transportation plan relies heavily on bus rapid transit while ignoring the reality that I-270 is already congested, more like a parking lot at times, and there's no serious plan to expand it. Marice, the county, continues to approve more housing in Clarksburg, but instead of expanding I-270, it's leaning on this bus rapid transit, which many commuters don't see as realistic substitute as, the plan detached from how people actually live and commute.
It's a valid question, Casey. However, we can't deny that there is a housing issue, not just in the DMV, but nationwide. So I think at the very least, this is addressing the housing needs, but also it creates incentive for the county to really, truly invest in, job growth in other parts of the county. So that way you would have people living in Clarksburg, working in Clarksburg, or even just commuting up north to Frederick, for example. I've done the reverse commute to Frederick. It's, even though I have to take 270, it works just fine. So I think at the very least, to create other job hubs, that would be great. But then also, as somebody who had 100% rating by the legal conservation voters every year that I was in the House of Delegates, I am wearing my environmental pretty plant flowers today. Flower earrings today. I would say, we do need to have a more, I would say, conscientious effort to get folks to use mass transit. And, I don't think that the BRT it's going to cut it. I don't think that the stops and the infrastructure is there yet. As somebody who has to drive from all of Years Mill to get to downtown Rockville to get to my office, I agree. I don't think that commuters are there yet, but I think that this is a step in the right direction.
Marice, when the council expanded from 9 to 11, there was hope that there would be greater representation in the Up-County. But frankly, it's still the power base, the political power base is down in Tacoma Park, Silver Spring, and in Bethesda. And I can tell you, if those people had to schlep up I-270, even to go to Falls Road or 28 to get off, they would reconsider their plans, what they're thinking about. Jackie, let's be blunt. If you had to add thousands of homes without expanding road capacity, it's just going to get bad to worse, isn't it?
Yeah, much like my road rage, it's just going to get from bad to worse on 270. You're completely right. It's like a parking lot. Marice is also right that we need more housing, but this is like building the track while the train is moving. Until we build the infrastructure, we shouldn't be expanding the housing and making congestion worse. We need to expand 270 first. And to the point about environmental, if we're adding more congestion to 270 and people are just sitting there not moving and their cars are running, we're actually polluting more than if we expand 270 and people can get to where they're going faster.
Well, look, 3 months ago, the council, voted to kill a highway plan that would have allowed for additional highway relief from Clarksburg up, to the other parts of the county. So, they seem to be acting at cross purposes, Marice, that on one hand, they want to build, they want those tax dollars, but they're so afraid of the environmentalist. I'm sorry. I know you got your earrings, but,
I don't think it's being afraid of the environmentalists. I think it's understanding where where resources are being exploited, and we need to be conscientious. I mean, again, this is an issue that does fall on party lines. So, I respect Jackie's opinion, but I think that we do need to have a more concerted effort in changing and incentivizing folks to go into mass transit. We see it all over the world. We see it in Europe, we see it in Asia. Why can't we do it here?
Marice, I don't want to be mean, but when was the last time you took a ride-on bus? I mean, honestly, I'm sorry. If
Well,
you have
that's that. I started my comments saying exactly that. I
if
don't
you have to
think
go to
that.
court, you're not gonna wait for a BRT to take you to
Absolutely
downtown
not. You're
Raleigh.
absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't think that the stops are in strategic places. I don't think that we're still dependent on roads, and so then because we're still road dependent, the efforts that we do have around mass transit are just not enough to change behavior.
Well, I mean, look, from a geographic perspective, you have geographic centers like Gaithersburg, Rockville, Silver Spring, and then around them you've got a lot of land, and people can't have to be able to get to these economic power centers in a reasonable amount of time. Jackie, I'm going to give you the last word on this.
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right. People are going to prioritize their convenience right now. As somebody who used to take the ride on bus to work when I lived in Rockville, it's not always the most convenient thing. If you're running a little bit behind in the morning and you just don't have time to make your bus, that's not an excuse to not be on time for work. So sometimes it's easier to prioritize working around your own schedule than, mass transit that isn't meeting the needs right now.
All right. Well, we have to go on to our next topic, and I'm going to surprise both of you with the way I'm going to open up this segment. I am in complete agreement with Senator John Fetterman about the need for data centers. That he came out yesterday in against the proposals from Senator Sanders from Vermont, and said we need data centers. So for Marice, mark this down. I agree with a Democrat for the first time in your lifetime. All right. For years, electricity demand in the United States and in Maryland has relatively been flat. Efficiency gains, slower population growth, and a maturing industrial base kept usage stable, but that era is over. Today, electricity demands is rising again, and the driver is not waste, it's innovation. At the center of the shift are data centers and artificial intelligence, and they are not fringe industries, but they are the backbone of the modern economy. You know, Marice, the question is not whether electricity demand will grow, it will. The real question is whether states like Maryland are prepared for that growth. And Montgomery County, Prince George's County, we all have these, plans for data centers, but they all seem to be one thing: don't build them. What are we going to do about that? How do we balance this out?
I don't think that the attitude of at least the folks from the legislature and from the administrative agencies in Maryland, I don't think that they're completely against data centers. I think they are putting a little bit of a brake on incentivizing the immediately building data centers in Maryland without some kind of guarantee that incentivizes these data centers to contribute to the efficiency of like generating enough power for them to run their data centers, but also to not take away from local grids. And let's be honest, this is going to affect the rural areas of Maryland, which happen to be also the most impoverished communities of Maryland. And if you want to compare to the state of Virginia, that's great. But I think here in Maryland, and like how Chairman Kumar Barve from the Power Commission said, we're not completely against it. It's just a matter of making sure that these data centers are contributing to how they're going to generate the power that they need, but also won't take away from the grid from our local communities. And I think that that's important. We can't just, when it comes to, I agree, just like what, with industrialization, et cetera, because innovation is driving it, then it should be easier for us to find efficient ways to continue to support AI, but also not deplete resources in generating the power that it needs.
So Jackie, I mean, Marice makes a valid point, but if Maryland wants to remain economically competitive, it must embrace both sides of the equation, growth in data-driven industries, but the energy infrastructure also needs to be addressed. And what we've seen in the past from the General Assembly and the governor is that energy transmission lines, cabling, pipelines, they're not in favor of expansion of the infrastructure needed to support the grid. Are
Yeah,
we creating a regulatory environment that welcomes innovation or not?
absolutely. We have become a state for a while that has driven away innovation and businesses with unnecessary tax burdens and things like that. The answer to this is actually very simple, and it's nuclear energy. It's green, it's efficient, it can power everything, and yet our legislature is decommissioning Calvert Cliffs. So we're really saying one thing and doing the complete opposite to get there. President Trump has made a good deal with a lot of businesses who want to bring in data centers and build these massive plants, but they are required to build their own infrastructure to support them with energy. And I see no reason why we can't be doing that. I see no reason why we shouldn't be moving towards nuclear energy, which is something both Republicans and Democrats can get on board with. And I think that we can have it all, but it's going to take common sense. And especially when it comes to energy, when everyone's sensitive with how high their electric bills are right now and continuing to get higher. And the legislature just voted down removing the Empower fee, which is one of the things that's really driving up that cost.
So, Marice, we're all talking about the same point. I mean, every major economic shift, whether it was from railroads to electricity to the internet, it was met with fear. And AI and data centers aren't optional. They're becoming the backbone of the economy. So are we going to have to wait till there's a crisis before the General Assembly and the governor are able to address this in a way that's forward thinking and not based on fear that we have in the past?
Like I mentioned in my comments earlier, I don't think that the fear is shared equally throughout, the governor's office and the legislature. I really don't. I think you can also see it just from how the more I know that in one of, in in the public media, the Moore's administration has come out kind of, not completely embracing it, but also not saying, we're not going to welcome data centers. Again, I don't think that it's completely shared all throughout our legislative bodies. And I think I'm seeing it more optimistically perhaps than you are.
Well, Jackie, we're almost out of time, so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to not give you the last word. I'm going to take the last word, and it's my message to the governor and to the General Assembly, which is adapt or die. For states competing in this economy, if you want to be successful, you got to move forward and embrace the fear and go forward with an energy project. All right,
Took the words out of my mouth.
when we return, taxpayers are shocked by the hidden taxes, surprise, surprise, and Mark Elrich's budget. Stay tuned.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right. Because a few hours ago, in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. Now I'm anything but lonely.
We have this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet,
We discover
they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure
Pure love.
love.
And welcome back. Montgomery County Executive Mark Elrich has proposed a budget that includes a property tax increase and an income tax increase. And guess what? A long list of new and higher fees that critics are calling a fee fest. The proposal includes increases across the board for higher parking fees, new charges for bus lane violations, a 32% increase in the 911 fee, higher solid waste charges, and a double-digit increase for community facility use. And that's not all. The budget also proposes new special taxing districts tied to development and transit corridors, including what we just talked about, the Clarksburg master plan. Marice, the county argues, we got a $850 million budget, a shortfall over the next 6 years. We need new sources of revenue. Is this the best way to approach it?
I mean, if you get to frame the problem and then try to come up with a way of fixing it, then it's easy to make that claim, right? So I mean, at this point, I think the nuance when you listen to these folks, basically like talking heads, right? Like, what interests are they representing? It's an election year, so the teachers are going to want all their needs to be met, all of their salary increases, whatever they're asking for, and so you can see the difference between what the executive is saying, so what Mark is saying, and then now what the county council has to kind of counterbalance, and it's so interesting because individuals on that county council who were basically helped to get elected by the teachers, now they're having to really show their true values, and so it's just interesting because nobody wants to raise taxes. Like, let's be honest, okay? Even as a Democrat, like, nobody wants to raise taxes, but at the end of the day, we do value our schools, we value the services that we want to provide, etc. I don't have a problem with increases in fees at all. I was born and raised in Virginia, and so Virginia gets to say, oh, we have lower taxes, but there's fees on everything. So let's be honest, I don't have a problem with the fees, but as a homeowner, this 6% interest on properties, it's going to make it less and less accessible for young families, millennials, to really have access to property ownership, which we understand is the number one way for people to move out of, to go up in the social mobility, basically, or to transfer generational wealth, for example. That's the easiest way. So, I do see that as problematic, but I also understand that we are facing huge shortfalls. And like I said, I mentioned I don't have a problem with the fee increases, but I do see problematic all the different tax proposals that there are.
Well, let's see what Jackie has to say. Jackie, you look at this budget, higher property taxes, higher income taxes, and then the layering on of dozens of fees. At what point does this stop being responsible and the voters start pushing back?
Well, to the first half of your question, the answer is several years ago. Every year that I've lived here, it's gotten more and more expensive. Marice is completely correct in that this is preventing their overall goal of affordable housing by continuing to raise your homeowners' taxes. It's getting beyond ridiculous at this point. And by raising all these taxes and fees, they're going to have the opposite effect. Look at what's going on in New York right now. You have Kathy Hochul begging all of the wealthy people who fled to Florida to come back to fund our the social programs over there. It's the same thing here. If you continue to tax people out of living here, they're going to leave. And then that tax burden is going to fall on the middle and lower classes, and the people who can leave are going to continue to leave. You cannot tax your way out of a deficit. And that's true at the state level as well. They're doing the same thing, and they try to say we're not raising taxes, but then they push it off on the counties, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now, so that Governor Moore can claim he didn't raise your taxes and the legislature can claim they didn't raise your taxes, but really they did, just in a roundabout way. So this is not the answer. This is not the solution. I think voters are really upset about it, but unfortunately, I think they're still going to vote Democrat across the board. I think this can be solved by having a lot more balance in our county government and having some Republicans to really push back and say, hey, there's a better way to do this.
Well, it's been a long time since Howie Dennis, who was the last Republican elected to the county council, was on the county council. It's been kind of a domination by the Democratic Party. But Marice, one of the things, they talk about these special taxing districts. My office has been in the White Flint taxing development zone, whatever they want to call it, for the last 20 years. And let me just tell you, It's produced bupkis. It has produced nothing during those 20 years. I mean, the Montgomery Rockville Pike is just as congested as it always has been. Nicholson Lane is just as congested as it always has been. All we've added is we've torn down a mall, and we got a big ugly 40 acres of rubble. So that's what this special taxing district has produced. That's what I'm concerned about. So is the county? I mean, you mentioned the fact that it's an election year. Are the county members going to have the guts to vote against these things, or are they going to do what Mike Knapp suggested last week, which is, instead of 5%, they'll pass a 3% budget? What do you think?
I think they're going to be strategic in not making themselves completely unelectable, and I think that's bottom line. That's what politics is, and I think at the very least they will go. They will find a compromise. But I think beyond this, the voters should also just take note as to what the priorities are, and if we're really, in other words, we should be the voters should be in the driver's seat when we decide who gets our tax money. And so,
Marice, I got to cut you off. We got 15 seconds. Jackie, I'm going to give you the last word. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off twice.
No, you're good. I mean, I'm just going to reiterate what I said before. You can't tax your way out of this problem, and they need to find a better solution, perhaps cutting spending on unnecessary things. And I can think of several.
All right. Thank you. So I like to close the show with something, yes, maybe it's not very humorous, but something more lighthearted. The Direct Line, an online Substack-like website the other day, wrote a humorous piece about the difficulties of getting a Maryland library card and concluded that it was harder to get than voting. Jackie, let me walk you through it. If you want a library card in Montgomery County, you have to show proof of residence, provide identification, fill out an application, verify your address. But in the state of Maryland, you can register with far fewer steps. What's going on here?
I mean, I think this is a 90-10 issue. People want there to be voter ID. It's common sense. Every other country in the world has voter ID. It's so unnecessary that this is such a partisan issue, partisan topic, when across the board voters think that it's common sense to be able to show ID to vote. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing it. There's nothing else to say other than that.
Okay, thank you. Marice, we only have about a minute left. I'll give you the last word on this.
Well, the Republicans made it a partisan issue. They want to make it more difficult for people to vote, and you can't compare a library card to voting because we're a country made up of states, and so no matter where you live, your vote should still count the same. Whereas with a library card, you're using county resources. So yes, you have to live in the county to be able to check out a book. That's all I have to say about that.
I'd rather just use my Amazon account and my Kindle. It's much easier.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. We'll come back in a moment with parting shots.
Hey world, I have a quick message. It's about safe driving. All right, let's go. Anytime you're driving, have the seatbelt buckled tight. Both hands on the wheel and your phone out of sight. When not in your hand trying to text somebody back. Because if you do, your car might get smacked. The moral of the story, just put your phone down. The people on the road will stay safe and sound. Put your phone down, put your phone down. People on the road will stay safe and sound. Yeah.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right because a few hours ago in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign. Not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a fourth ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
And welcome back. Now with parting shots, Jackie Sackstein.
I want to bring up an issue that's been huge going on in the legislature. This year, and this is not the first year they've tried it, but this is the first year they've been successful, the Maryland State Legislature approved Westmore's budget, which included cutting a lot of money for disability services in the state. like I said, with regards to the county budget, there are better ways to get out of these situations. We do need to cut spending, but maybe we should cut spending on things like giving health insurance to and benefits to illegal immigrants, or giving transgender surgeries to children. I think there are better ways to be responsible in the budget, and this is not the way to do it. And unfortunately, the Republicans brought an amendment to the budget yesterday with the vote to put that funding back in for disability services, and Democrats either voted it down or walked off the floor to not be on the record to do so. So unfortunately, that amendment failed. So this is me standing with the disabilities community as somebody who has family members who have disabilities issues and friends of family. It's not the way to approach our budget crisis in the state.
Thank you, Jackie. Now, a third party shot, Marice Morales.
Just to echo the sentiments of the majority of parents that have been very vocal about their disapproval of the closing down of Wooten High School. It's unfortunate, but we know that the school board has made their decision. And just a reminder to voters that we if something is really important to you, then you better get folks that are actually going to stick to their guts and not to the interest groups that they represent.
Thank you, Marice, and thank you, Jackie. I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week. Next week is the weekend of Easter, and we will not be on the air next week. You'll see the best of Casey next week, and you might see Marice and Jackie all over again. In any event, I want to thank you all for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.